And we're just doing business as usual. We was running Murder Inc., 9-figure business, hugely successful. And all we're doing is thinking like, okay, you want to check out books, you want to look into what's going on, no problem. And that was really the truth. That was the ignorance of what we didn't realize.
Welcome to Injustice for All, and I'm Robert Simels. Today we're going to be joined by an old friend of mine, Chris Lorenzo, also known as Chris Gotti to many of the public. He and his brother Irv created a company, a music company record label called Murder Inc., with stars like Ashanti and Ja Rule as part of the performers who appeared on that label. And Chris, unfortunately, along with Irv, were prosecuted by the federal government back in the early 2000s for their association with a narcotic trafficker, according to the government, named Kenneth Supreme McGriff. We're going to talk to Chris today a little bit about his experience of having been indicted, going through the process, and coming out the other side. And we'll also talk to Chris about how he has come out on the other side. But before Chris joins us, let's talk a little bit about the week in review here. It was never my intention, as I began this podcast, to talk about anything other than the flawed aspects of the criminal justice system and to try to focus on the aspects of the system that many of you don't know and many of you do know, and why they fail and why the system works in a way that we have people in prison who are not guilty. But the current administration, and this is not political because it didn't start with them, but the current administration has engaged in a series of steps that are like shooting yourself in the foot, that highlight the problems with the criminal justice system. Retribution, that's part of the Department of Justice's agenda. They will do whatever the president essentially directs them to do. They have indicted Jim Comey, the former FBI director. They've indicted Letitia James, the current Attorney General of the state of New York. All because, and they're looking at others, of course. They've indicted John Bolin. They are targeting other people who were, in Trump's view, his enemies and people who attempted to prosecute him, whether it be within the Senate in the impeachment hearings or whether it be criminally. So he's looking at Fani Willis down in Georgia, and he's looking at creating cases against Jack Smith, the former special prosecutor, who had been leading the indictments of Trump for stealing classified documents and for attempting to overthrow the government on January 6, 2021. Retribution by a president and or the Department of Justice, as I say, is not new, not novel to the Trump administration. It's just become so underscored in the way it's being played out here. I mean, Pam Bondi just seems to do whatever Trump asks her to do. It's unfortunate. And she's not the first attorney general to follow the direction of the president. So many times and so many headlines underscore what I'm talking about. In this past few weeks, we've had the debacle of Trump's appointment of U.S. attorneys. And in New Jersey and in Los Angeles and in Nevada and in Virginia, Eastern District of Virginia, people who have not been approved by the Senate. To make it very simple, when a president appoints someone to be the U.S. attorney of any particular district in the United States, he requires the advice and consent of the Senate and their vote to approve that person for that position in order for them to hold that position. This president and the Department of Justice have not followed that precedent, that rule, and so they have appointed people in those various states that I've mentioned who have not been approved by the Senate. And as a result, they are by law only permitted to stay in office as a temporary assignment, temporary appointment, for 120 days. It's turned out that many of them have stayed beyond that. The U.S. Attorney in New Jersey and in Nevada and in Los Angeles all have stayed beyond that period of time. And indeed, Lindsey Halligan, his most current appointment to the Eastern District of Virginia, is basically in jeopardy of not being properly appointed as well. These are all being litigated in the courts, and there is at least one decision by a judge in Pennsylvania, Alina Habba, who is a U.S. attorney in New Jersey, is acting unlawfully by continuing to hold that position. The same has basically been found in the U.S. attorney for Nevada and the U.S. attorney in Los Angeles, and that's the attack that both Mr. Comey in the Eastern District of Virginia and Letitia James are making on Lindsey Halligan, that she is improperly vested with the role of being the U.S. attorney. This could backfire on the Department of Justice. Perhaps indictments brought during the period of this unlawful occupation of the office will all have to be dismissed. But even if they're not dismissed, we have what we call the speedy trial rule in the federal system, which requires the government, prosecutors, to be ready to prosecute a case within 70 days of the charges. That's not happening because all these cases are being put on the back burner by judges until this is resolved as to who the prosecutors are and whether they were lawfully in office to bring these charges. This all is going to play out. We don't know what the results may be, but whatever they are, it is not a good status for the Department of Justice. In addition, for whatever the reasons may be, the fund for the Criminal Justice Act, that is, the people who are paid by the federal government to act as attorneys for those who cannot afford counsel and who must get attorneys outside of the federal defender's office. And let me explain that. When you can't afford an attorney, normally the federal defender's office in each district, federal district in the United States, are entitled to be represented by the federal defenders. But when there's more than one defendant in a case, there would be a conflict by the federal defenders to represent more than one person in that case. Their loyalties would be divided among different people. So we have a criminal justice panel of private attorneys who are paid by the government to represent people where those conflicts occur. So if the federal defenders is representing one person, a court-appointed attorney, a CJA attorney, is appointed to represent the other people, and they are paid out of a separate fund. Well, the funds for CJA attorneys and for experts and investigators ran out in June, and they're not getting paid. And so they're not in a position to perform what they are asked to perform. And this is in violation of the guarantees by the Constitution. How this is going to play out, yes, all these attorneys are obligated to continue to represent these people, but you have to ask how much enthusiasm they have for their job, despite the fact that they have that job, to do that without getting paid. Well, hopefully that will get resolved. And that's not a function of the government closing down. This is, they ran out of money and the federal government's refusing to give them additional funds to be able to perform their function. I wanted to talk briefly about the two cases that occurred this past week. Many of you know about the acquittal of the so-called sandwich guy in Washington, D.C. This was such a waste of time and money that you have to ask yourself, what was the purpose? To recap, apparently there were some people protesting the occupation of Washington, D.C. by immigration authorities and ICE people. And among the people who were protesting was a fellow who was working for the Department of Justice named Sean Dunn. And Sean was standing there yelling at or talking to one of the ICE officers. And ultimately, he took the Subway sandwich that he had, 6-inch, I think, and he threw it at the ICE officer, and it hit him in his bulletproof vest. They chased Sean after he did that. They arrested him and charged him with an offense. He was fired by the Department of Justice, and he went to trial. Now, this trial was for a misdemeanor charge. Why a misdemeanor? The U.S. Attorney in D.C. tried to get him indicted on 3 separate occasions by a federal grand jury. In each instance, the federal grand jury turned down the U.S. Attorney about indicting him for a felony. They didn't think it warranted a felony, and so no indictment was returned. Instead, the U.S. Attorney, Jeanine Pirro, decided to have him charged with a misdemeanor in the local court, which is a federal court, but it's the Superior Court in Washington, D.C. In any event, he went to trial. And according to the Border Patrol agent, Gregory Larimore, the sandwich exploded against his vest, and it left onion and mustard on his vest. This was a much debated issue, if you can believe that. And video of the incident was played for the jury, where we see the sandwich falling from the vest. We don't see an explosion. We don't see mustard. We don't see onions on the vest. And in any event, it's a bulletproof vest. It wasn't pierced by the mustard or the onions. Nonetheless, the government pursued this prosecution. And the jury took very little time to ultimately find Sean not guilty. And you have to ask why this was done. I don't have an answer. But it was a waste of time and a bad example for the criminal justice system, in my view. But by contrast to that, there was a prosecution out west in Los Angeles, not in Los Angeles, California, of a woman who was charged. Her name was Zoe Rosenberg, and she's an activist. She was protesting the way in which birds were being treated at a poultry factory. And so she invaded the poultry factory and was making a protest. And she was arrested after rescuing 4 chickens from that slaughterhouse. She was caught on video as well. She looked in the camera, frankly, and explained why she was doing what she was doing. Nonetheless, the full force of the federal government was brought against her. She was prosecuted, and convicted. And she was convicted basically because the judge in that case stripped her of her ability to defend herself, did not allow her to explain the necessity of trying to rescue, in her view, the birds. Now, necessity, we'll get into this more on a different day, but necessity is a defense where I did this because it was necessary to perform the action. So you could save someone, a person, and say, I did certain things that might have violated the law, but it was a necessity to do so to save that person. The judge ruled that the necessity defense doesn't apply to animals. I think the judge was wrong, but we'll see on appeal whether or not the judge is wrong. In any event, she's facing many years in prison. It doesn't make any sense. Seems like an expenditure of time and effort by the government is not worthy, but that's part of the reason that the criminal justice system doesn't work. We're now being joined by my good friend, Chris Lorenzo.
Yes.
And how are you today, Chris?
I'm good. I woke up today. I started off like I always do with my some meditation, some working out, and prayer, and I'm ready to go. Excited about this.
Well, me too. Before we get to where you are today, and I know you're involved in so many good things today.
Yes.
Let me take you back to when we first met.
Yes.
And unfortunately, at the time, around 2003, there was a belief by some in the federal government, particularly in the Department of Justice, that you and your brother were engaged in some improprieties. So maybe you can explain what was happening and how this occurred.
Well, they raided our offices, and to my ignorance, and as well as my brother, we didn't realize we had to protect ourselves because we wasn't charged with a crime. We thought, okay, they're investigating, cool, come in, look at whatever you want. And we're just doing business as usual. We was running Murder Inc., 9-figure business, hugely successful. And all we're doing is thinking like, okay, you want to check out books, you want to look into what's going on, no problem. And that was really the truth. That was the ignorance of what we didn't realize. And we learned very quickly that we had to protect ourselves. We had to hire attorneys. It got very expensive. And we're not charged with any crime, right?
So,
at this moment.
Murder Inc. explain that. What is Murder Inc.?
Murder Inc. is a record label, so we started a lot of careers from DMX, Jay-Z, and of course, Ja Rule and Ashanti, Lloyd, and helped out so many others in the industry, from Jennifer Lopez, Mariah Carey, Fat Joe. I mean, the list is long, that we helped in their careers to propel their careers to move forward by producing music. My brother was one of the biggest producers in the game. If at that time, maybe probably arguably the biggest producer in the hip hop or just the music industry, period. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest run at #1 for producing multiple artists that took over the #1 spot.
That's your brother, Irv.
Yes, Irv, yes.
And just by way of background, you and Irv came up from humble beginnings.
Very humble beginnings, yes.
Out of
it's 8 of us.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know that it's in our family. It's 8 of us. Mom and dad had 8 kids. Yes, same mother and father. They always ask me that. One of the more sad things in the Black community. They never expect you to have the same mother and father when they hear so many brothers and sisters. But yes, mom and dad had 8 kids. They didn't have any money, but what they did have was love. And for the family, and they wanted to take care of 8 kids, but they didn't have the resources. Basically, we was originally from Brownsville, Brooklyn, so it was just imagine 8 of us or 10 of us, count mom and dad, in a 3-bedroom apartment in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Then we moved from there to Hollis, Queens, and had my grandmother, my mother's mother and father put up the money and allowed us to get into this house in Hollis, and 3-bedroom again, but still it's a house. So we used every square foot of that house. Every inch of that house was put to use. One bathroom. So imagine sharing one bathroom with everybody. That's all it was. Until I got into construction and I built another bathroom down in the basement. Then we had two, but all those adolescent years is just one bathroom with 8. I got 5 sisters. So it's 2 brothers and 5 sisters I had.
And ultimately, you helped Irv achieve his dream of being in the music business, right?
You know, when you mentioned that word, okay, initially, like Irv's my little brother. And if I played football, Irv played football. If I played basketball, Irv played basketball. If I DJ'd, Irv DJ'd. So I look at it like he just followed his big brother. But what I noticed as a big brother, he had a different talent than me in music with the DJ. Like he was so much better than me, so much better than everyone else that I knew. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to help him if this is what he wants to do because he's really that good. And that's what I did. So that's where the help came in. But the initial side of it was him following his footsteps with Big Bro. And once I seen that talent, all I did was try to nurture it, support it, and get whatever he needed to help him thrive in it. And it went from DJing to producing music to making a record label, creating this label that we're co-founders of.
It's hard for probably anybody who's not in that business to appreciate what you have just described.
Yes.
Because it's beyond rare.
Can I ask you a question? You're an attorney. Okay. You went from was there someone in your life, right, that helped you propel your career or to turn it into what it became in that legal field?
No.
It was all you.
Basically, I mean, my father was a dentist. My mother was involved in business as well, but nobody was suggesting that the law was the direction I should take. Just evolved. And
I look at you as an outlier in your space, right? I feel any outlier in that space was afforded, let's say, or given someone to help them so they could attain the success in that space.
I kept watching Perry Mason on TV, and he gave me the direction.
Yeah. So I look at Irv. I helped him attain his outlier status because I didn't let anything distract him. And what does that mean? So maybe when I just explain this, you'll understand maybe, and then you'll say, wait a minute, maybe my dad being a dentist and I didn't have to go do something else, he allowed me to stay focused in law was the reason I was able to attain all the knowledge and information, because that's what I did for Irv. I didn't let him do anything. Literally, I paid for everything he could. And when we was doing music early days, there was no money. I stopped because there's no money. Went and started a construction business that was very successful. That's where our family made our first millions of dollars, was me and my sister in construction. And I'm busy funding Irv to get him whatever equipment he needed, if he needs to buy records, whatever it is, to move him to go, he needs to go at a show. And I gave him the money to do so. Because there was no money in music at that time, but I kept telling him, don't stop. And then I afforded him his life because I was doing construction, making money. And that's what I mean. And that's, everybody needs somebody to help them be laser focused in what they're doing to achieve that outlier status is what I'm talking about.
Well, by contrast, and I don't mean to suggest that my father was promoting my involvement and my success in the legal business.
Yes.
But he did help, of course, by what he provided for me.
Yeah,
And,
that's all I was looking for.
and when my father would talk to his patients, every discussion he had with his patients was a dialogue. Whatever that patient's view was on life or on politics, my father took the opposite view, and he debated every patient in the chair. And this is what I would listen to. So I understood that to be successful in the outcome of an interaction with another person,
Right.
you needed to listen and you needed to pursue whatever weaknesses you heard in that conversation that didn't support the argument.
Right.
So to that degree, yes, my father was instrumental in how my mind functioned.
Yes, that's what I was looking for. That's why I said when I explain what I mean, it'll come back and then you'll be able to put it in yourself, because I haven't found one person of successful background without having that unique part. If I go and I dove into like careers of, let's say, Bill Gates. They gave him the keys to a computer room when no one had it, and he learned all the computer's knowledge. Now, that's what made him become Bill Gates and create Microsoft. It wasn't anything other than that. If he doesn't get that opportunity, we don't know if we ever see the Bill Gates with Microsoft, Steve Jobs, or any of these other guys. They all had these same similar stories. If I go into music, what's the Beatles? They performed, they was given an opportunity in Hamburg, which is not in their country. They had to go and travel outside of their country, but they was able to perform every night at this club. And that's when they honed their skills: song making, songwriting, performing, doing shows, interacting with audience. And that's what made them. If you talk to Paul McCartney, he will tell you that's what it was. Like, they all have their statements of what it is. And then I put it in sports. Michael Jordan, he got cut from his high school basketball team. How to become the best player in the world. If his father and mother didn't afford him, where he didn't have to get a job, pick him up, take him to try to practice and back and forth, he would never have became Michael Jordan. It takes one little thing to ruin that person that could become that outlier. And that's something very important, I feel, in the success stories that are not told enough. Because that one thing, if he had to get a job, something simple as that, to help his mom and dad, he can't become Michael Jordan. The hours it takes or the focus is just what it is. Same goes for LeBron. His mother had to be taking him to all of these practices, all these games when he's young to get him ready. And then he takes over. Irv took over. Like, once you get past that point, you took over. And then that's when you could become who you are.
Right. But I know your story well, and I know that you created the platform for Irv to become what Irv became.
Yes.
And financially and emotionally, you supported him, and he had great talent, obviously. We all know that. Anybody who knows the music business knows how great he was. But I also know that even while he was achieving all that success, when you would go to your offices, you were there.
Yes.
Overseeing everything.
Absolutely. I ran the business, but again, my mind was to keep as much off of Irv's plate as possible that's not creative. So the more I did that, the more I felt we would be successful. And that's absolutely what ended up happening. But that was my mindset from the very beginning. I wouldn't let people talk to Irv that was outside, because in that era, in music, in hip hop especially, you had all of these guys from the street trying to find their way in. You know, they want to be a part of the success or the money opportunities in music that existed at that time. And my job was to keep all of the riffraff away from Irv. Not the easiest job in the world, but I did it very well. Got me in situations that probably, most people wouldn't have liked to be in the middle of, but I didn't think nothing of it. There's no plan B. We would always say, me and Irv, there's no plan. This is it. This is it. One of my biggest mistakes was when I stopped doing construction to do music full time because we was very successful. We was doing tens of millions of dollars in construction, all city work, union jobs, lowest bid. We had to bid on the jobs and we would get the jobs. And my sister and myself was very good at that. And we stopped. I closed it up because I said, I can't do both. And I should have figured a way out to do both. In hindsight's 2020. I should have figured a way to do both.
Well, Irv, ultimately, and I don't want to shortcut the story,
Sure.
but Irv goes and works for Def Jam and then ultimately is given an opportunity to have his own label.
Yes. Well, see, again, the story of that, most people don't understand because they think Irv started Murder Inc., and that's not the truth. The truth is Irv wanted to be the best or the biggest producer in the game. I made him that. When I leave construction, Irv is selling beats, producing for other artists at $5,000 a song.
What's a beat? So people who don't know.
The beat, the track, the music that you listen to is the beat. That's right. What we're calling the beat in this case. So Irv would make that track that the artist would either sing over or rap over. That music, that bed of music. And we were selling that bed of music for $5,000 per song. And that's when I came over and I'm making 20%. I'm like, Irv, we don't have enough music. Like I'm selling every beat we have, but it's only 3-4 beats and that's $3,000-$4,000 and that's not gonna cut it for me at the time. I got bills, I got, overhead, and I'm like, that is not gonna do it. And then I'm waiting on the producers to make more music so I could sell them. So I told Irv, I'm gonna hire more producers. He barks back at me and says, I don't care what you do, I'm not taking less than $5,000 because he was worried I'm gonna have to share the money. And I said, no, I'm going to raise the price. Of course, I'm not giving you less than what you was getting. I'm trying to push it up. And I did that. And I brought in some of the biggest, some of the best producers in the game work for us. And they collaborated with my brother. And we went from 5,000 to 50,000 in less than 6 months. And then we went from 50,000 to 100,000 in the first year. And then 100 to 250,000 by second year of me being there. Now we're making some real money. Irv is the biggest producer in the game. And then Tommy Mottola of Sony, the CEO of Sony, reaches out and says he wants to buy 4 beats. I'm like, that's $1 million. Let's go. So we had a meeting with a guy named Dave McPherson at Justin's, Puffy's old restaurant. And we go in there and Dave says, Tommy doesn't want to buy beats. He wants to give you a record label. See, that's why I say Irv didn't realize he was going to have wanted a record label. He just wanted to be the biggest producer in the game. And that's what I made him. And that's the reason we got an offer for a record label. And then it became a bidding war with every record label, trying to get us over there to have a joint venture with them. And Universal ended up winning out. Def Jam, IDJ, Island Def Jam ended up winning at the highest bid to get us over there, which was one of the biggest deals at the time in music for an independent label to start. And we ended up staying with them and started our record label. The way Irv gets the name, because he didn't predict he was going to have a record label. If you were going to start a company, you don't think you would know the name? Irv would tell the story. He didn't have a name for the label. You don't start a company and don't have the name of the company, right?
Right.
It doesn't go public until you have a name. So that's the proof of what I'm saying. Like Irv would tell the story all the time. He didn't have a name. And the truth is, why did he pick Murder Inc.? It was Murder Week on Arts and Entertainment Channel, A&E. And they're doing a story of Luca Luciano, Albert Anastasia, in the group they formed called Murder Inc. And what did they do? The voice, I'll never forget that voice of the show because I watched it. And he's like, the notorious Murder Inc. And they made hits. And they had the Tommy gun, da-da-da-da-da, in the screen with bullet holes. But that's what Irv went crazy over because he said, that's what he does. They said, he's like, that's what we do. We make hits. we make hits. And that's the play on the words, Murder Inc. and what we do, because he took it from there.
So you create Murder Inc., the record label. How do you get, I know this is an aside from the topic we were going to talk about, but as long as you're going into this much detail, you get great artists to be on that label. How do you get those artists?
Man, it's the grace of God. Number one, you always got to keep him first. Ja Rule is from Hollis, Queens. We're from Hollis. A guy named Chris Black. He was in a group. He was in a group called Cash Money Click that Irv signed. Before Irv got to Def Jam, he was running an independent label called Blunt Records with a guy named Steve Gottlieb. Steve Gottlieb had a company called Television Tunes, and Irv went to him with an artist named Mike Geronimo. And he said, let's start this record label, Blunt Records. And Irv was like, cool, like a hip hop version for Steve Gottlieb, who knew nothing about the business, but he owned the platform. Irv starts it, brings in Mike Geronimo. Mike Geronimo has very good success. And the next thing you know, Irv gets another group called Cash Money Click. And inside of Cash Money Click, Chris Black is one of our dear friends, lived up the block from us. But inside of the group is Ja Rule and another guy named O1 and Otha Miller. So when Irv started making records for them to get him a deal on Blunt, he just noticed this guy with a big voice, which is Ja Rule. And he was like, yo, would let me hear the music and be like, what you think? And I'm like, who's that? Like we would always identify Ja. And I was like, man, he needs to be solo. Irv was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm making him solo. I'm going to take him in from the group and make him a solo artist. But that's how he found Ja Rule. Now, if you get to Ashanti, there's a guy named Mario Baeza, who's like an uncle to us. Very wealthy attorney. He's a corporate lawyer, worked at Devil Voice in Plimpton as a partner with them. And basically, he had signed Ashanti to a label, to his label, AJM Records, which is his three kids' names, each one, Ariel, Jati, and Mario, AJM, and had Ashanti. And then he came to us and said, I want you to make Ashanti a record. Because he had a relationship with Dick Parson, who owned Warner Brothers at the time, or CEO, chairman of Warner. And he was like, I'm going to put him on Warner Brothers. So Irv didn't pay no much attention to him because Irv was like, I don't want to make no records for someone else. I'm focused over here getting money with Ja Rule. Irv would hit me with the blinkers, like, stay focused. This is all we're doing. This is where we make our money. And so me, when I heard Ashanti, I heard a good voice, but then I kept asking, who wrote the songs? And she said she did. And, oh, she's a writer. So I started running beats back and forth to her constantly to let her write songs to our music, to all my producers, and see what kind of records. Now, all I kept hearing was a really good pen. It is the complete truth. Again, she's a good singer, but I was more taken by her wordplay in song. And I knew if I could put her with Irv, God knows where they could go. Because Irv is that talent. That's what Irv does. He takes that talent, nurtures, and creates something special and goes. So I kept saying, don't worry, I'm going to get you to Irv. I'm going to get you, have her come to the office and have to really literally fight Irv to come say hello. Because Irv's like, I'm focused. I'm not thinking about no one else. And I would get him, he come say hello, walk out, and as soon as he leaves, they're like, did he like our music? Did he like it? And I'm like, oh yeah, he likes it. He's just working on stuff. Don't worry. And I kept her very interested in hanging on. And then I put her on a record with Fat Joe calls me up. Fat Joe calls me up to get her, he needs an artist to be on a Big Pun record that they're putting out, an R&B artist, he said, a singer. I said, I got one. He said, you do? Like, he doesn't think Murder Inc. had an R&B because we didn't technically, but I'm working with Ashanti. He said, yeah. Well, he said, bring it to the studio tonight. I tell Ashanti, she drives all the way to the studio from Glen Cove, and she gets in the studio and she does exactly what I think she could do. She pins the hook in no time. She writes the hook, and they love it. When Joe comes out, he's like, yo, she's great. Yo, your artist is great. We're going to use the record. We'll send the contracts. You know, this is the money we're going to pay. All of this. And I say, do me a favor. He said, what's that? I say, tell Irv. So he calls Irv up. And he's like taking like, call Irv, it's your artist. He doesn't like, what do you want me? I said, just tell him she killed it. Tell her what you're saying. So he calls Irv and tells her, yo, your artist. Irv's like, what artist? He doesn't know what he's talking about. Then he says, Ashanti, your R&B artist. So Irv just listened, gets off the phone with Joe, and then the next call is right to me. He calls me and says, yo, bring that girl to the studio. So, and that's the birth of Ashanti. Once I got her there, he put her through all these tests, like how to write with writing songs, and she passed every one. She was amazing. You know, Ashanti was, again, she was one of them special artists. Like she could go in the middle of all these guys in the studio, that energy, and she'd sit there, her little self would go right there, write the songs with no feeling of pressure or anything. She's sitting next to Ja and all these other artists, and she went right into work like it was like she's supposed to, and she killed it. And then after that, Irv was like, that's it, we won her, but she still signed to Mario. So we ended up having to pay Mario a lot of money to get her free. And we did. Irv moved forward with Ashanti like she was signed, and she wasn't signed. And we already had a video over $500,000 we spent on the video alone. And Leo was going crazy because we didn't have a contract for it. And Irv was like, she's gonna sign. She's gonna sign.
You're talking about Leo Cohen?
Yes.
Who was with Def Jam?
He was running Def Jam. He was the boss. He was our partner. Like we had a joint venture with Def Jam, so Def Jam is his company and Murder Inc. is ours. And we had a 50-50 joint venture.
So now you have Ja Rule, who's killing it out there, right?
Yes.
Number one single after number one, right?
Yeah.
Ashanti the same.
Yes. She's in the Guinness Book also for the highest selling female artist ever, still. For the number one, for the most sold records in the first week. You
have other artists who are on the label.
Mm-hmm. Lloyd, Caddy, Black Child, Vita, and Charlie Baltimore.
Charlie Baltimore, you're working with Jennifer Lopez?
Absolutely. Huge records with Jennifer Lopez. Globally, Jennifer opened us up to a whole another, side. That's what we did. We opened her up to the hip hop because she couldn't sell or move records on black radio. And that's the reason Tommy Mottola said, please help me with Jennifer Lopez. And that's what we did. We changed her whole music career, her whole trajectory after we finished. Yeah.
Tremendous success. I mean, you're the envy of the music world at that point. And then all of a sudden, in mid-2000 or 2003, 2004, you learn that you're under investigation by the federal government.
Yes.
For what?
They did. At the time, they didn't tell you. That's the crazy part. That's why I said they did not tell us what we're under investigation for. They just said you're under investigation. And it's like, my brother would always say, if you watch Charlie Brown, remember the kid that was dirty and he had the cloud that followed him everywhere? I forget his name. That's not lines. I forget his name, but he said that's how it felt because everywhere you went, you're not charged with anything, but everyone's looking at you. I'm talking about from a corporate standpoint. They don't want to do business with you anymore the same way. They're looking like something's wrong. And you're not thinking anything's wrong. You're thinking that was our ignorance. We're thinking that, like, we didn't do anything. What's there to think about? Right? They want to check us. Cool, come and check. They took all of the records, everything, and they came back and threw it and said, okay. But we're sitting there with this cloud over us. It really put a damper on the success we had.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, in around January 2005, they searched your offices.
No. When they raided our offices, that's what started we was under investigation for over 2.5 years. So we was acquitted in 2005. So it is January of 2003.
That's right. 2003.
When they raided the offices. Right after that, they raided our offices. They came to our houses, everything very strategic in the way they moved to get any records or to see whatever they could take, They did that to me, Irv, our accountant, Ja, and a few other people, all at the same time. 6 a.m, they was there. It's like they want to make sure you can't call each other, right? Because you have agents in everyone's place at the same time. You can't get a call from your brother. You can't, they're very strategic. In hindsight, when I look how they move, so strategic, I was like, wow, that's very smart. The way they move for if we was trying to do something, I'm not thinking about it because, like I said, I'm ignorant. I'm like, why are they doing all of this? That was really our vibe, Rob. We was like, what the hell are they looking for? What do they want?
Well, of every negative inference they could draw about you and Irv and the business, they drew.
Yes, I felt. It's funny. I felt they picked the wrong two. And I don't want to talk about, I'm just saying that because, we all know the government knows everything pretty much, right? If they investigate you, they know everything. There's no stone unturned for them, pretty much. But they should have realized that it's a family of 8. Me and Irv was never in any trouble of illegal stuff. Here we are now making big money, right? Legally, why would we turn to doing something illegal? We would have did that when we was broke in Hollis and had nothing, or in Brownsville. Like, they know that my whole family has no history of that. So here they are looking at 2 guys, and I believe it was because of the name of Murder Inc. and a nickname called Gotti. Irv was given that by Jay-Z. It wasn't like Irv chose Gotti. Irv's nickname was Magoo. I tell everyone this all the time. And I ended up with Gotti because in the industry, if Irv is Irv Gotti, you got to be Chris Gotti. You're brothers. And that's how it stuck to me. My nickname was Joe Hart. It wasn't nothing about nothing. But they portrayed it. And then you would notice when you go through the trial because they misunderstood everything. Everything they took one way, and I'm like, what are you talking about? They didn't understand how we spoke, our language of how we speak in our culture, the slang that we deal with and use. They're thinking one way, and we're like, no, this is this. And they look stupid every time in court.
Well, and I don't mean to condense this too much, but they would take the lyrics of the music that Ja or others were singing, and they would say, oh, they mean this. This is literal. They want to kill this guy. They want to do this.
Yes.
And they just...
Well, honestly, Rob, to be completely truthful, we don't have a lot of... our name is Murder Inc. and our money was made on women records, meaning we spoke to the female more so than to the street or the male side. So you could say that. And I would say that's not even real if they're really listening, to the music. It's like, come on, listen to the music we make and you'll understand. We didn't make records like that. Yes, our name portrayed it and our image might have portrayed tough gangster stuff, but the music physically did not.
Right.
A full conscious, and Irv was big on that. That was one of, I hate giving up our, let's say, our intellectual property or secrets of what made Murder Inc. And that was Irv literally producing records and making sure that it's complete polar opposite. So based on the music, if the music sounds, let's say, soft, he wants to go hard. He wants the words to be more aggressive. If the music was hard, he wants the words to be softer. If that makes sense, I don't know if you're a reggae guy, but if you understand what I'm saying, you'll be like, okay, but that was the Murder Inc. formula, and you could go listen to every record, and that's what it is.
Well, they went really far afield in everything that they looked at. And it was that IRS agent who headed the investigation, who
Yeah.
was as stiff white bread type of a guy you could have. But even up in the offices,
Yes.
there would be people on both sides of the halls, people getting haircuts, people doing all sorts of
Yes.
stuff.
You remember.
And they would draw the most negative inference that this was part of a street crew that you had.
But let me tell you what that is.
I know, but go ahead. I want you to explain that.
I can explain it very clearly. When you're making music, unless it's a locked out session and it's just the artist in the room, everyone that's involved in the scene that they're in, and our artists like commotion to be in to make the words they write. They draw inspiration from everything you're seeing. So we never blocked it. We wanted it to fester because it was very successful for us. Meaning we didn't have a problem if there's 100 guys there and one is getting a haircut, the other one's playing cards, gambling. They're all talking and screaming. And our artists that are writing the records is drawing from that energy to make the record they're about to make. If we made a record about women, okay, this is all true stuff, Rob. We went and had 20, 30, 40 women around for our artists to draw on. If we wanted to make a club record, a party record, we was in the club to make sure he had the scene, the environment, the thing to draw from to write the record. See, they're not thinking from a creative standpoint, and that was the problem. They're thinking from a negative standpoint, and of course I could spin everything negative if I have 100 people, no matter who they are, right? That's you're consorting to be a gang or something. That's the misunderstanding of what went on, and we're not thinking we're doing anything wrong because we're just doing what we do to make our music in the moment. And all of this thing is getting aggravated and aggregated together and escalating, and we're not realizing that in our position. So when everything hits the fan and it's like, whoa, we're like, what the hell just happened?
So I want to put a little postscript on that. In part, you and Irv took a lot of guys from the street and took them out of harm's way by giving them jobs at your offices.
Absolutely. They didn't get jobs easy. That's the part that, the government came in, the feds came to my house and asked me that question directly. Why are you hiring ex-cons? Are you building an army? Exact words. Are you trying to build an army? And I looked at him and I said, why are you criticizing me doing something positive? You should be giving me an award. That's what I said back to him. I said, these guys are now productive citizens. They had a record, yes. I don't care of their history because I'm only looking at what they're going to do for me. And I didn't hire them. You're an ex-con, come on, I got a job for you. No, they would come and meet me and say, can I work for you? And the worst thing they could tell me, I'll do anything. I don't want you to do anything because I'll give you a mop and tell you go mop, and I know you don't want to clean them toilets and mop the floor. So you have to come back to me and tell me what you want to do in music. And if I could figure out how to help you, I will. And that's what I did for every one of them. And I'm telling you, it's like a badge of, again, honor, because I will sit here and tell you 90% or more of them all are living productive lives today, 20 plus years later, and they're good because I showed them a different way of life. And that's what it takes. When you're dealing with that element, I'll write a book one day. It's called The Domestication of a Gangster, because I domesticated these gangsters. That's how I look at it. I really did. And it wasn't because of anything but me talking to them and showing them that you could really achieve the wealth you're looking for without doing something illegal. I used to take my guys to the club. I don't drink. Rob, I probably spent more money in liquor than anyone else that never drinks, for sure, by far, right? And I would buy bottles after bottle after bottle, and I'm drinking orange juice and cranberry or water all night. And one day the feds was at the door. We go to the club, they're at the door, And I tell them, I said, well, you want to come in? I say, come and get a drink with us. You know, we're not doing nothing. He sees how many guys I have with us. There's probably about 25, 35 guys with us, girls and guys, but mostly guys. And we go in the club. I buy up a bunch of bottles, and again, it's probably spent about 30, 40, maybe 50 grand for the night. You know, again, I have a driver who's not drinking, and I don't drink. We walk outside, and they're there. And I'll never forget, I gave him a bit sarcasm, and I say, why are you following me around everywhere? Why don't you just come and get a drink with me? I said, are you mad because I'm fucking showing these guys that you deem as bad guys or bad people a good time? And I said, all I'm doing is trying to show them that there's another side of life, and you don't get that part. I said, don't be mad you picked the wrong job or the wrong profession, and I blew your fucking year's salary right now in one night. I said, you just picked the wrong job. And they would just be quiet staring at me. I know they would get mad, but that's the truth, like how I look at it. Like, they were so mad that I'm doing that for these guys that they deem as bad people. And I'm like, they're good to me, right? And they're going to serve a purpose in the community. And they should really have given me an award for helping the communities out, for giving these guys jobs and turning them into real civilized human beings. Because these guys, some of them were savages when you look at their past records. But they,
I'm going to give you the best example of one of the people that the feds thought you should have nothing to do with.
Of course, the main one.
And the main one. And that being Kenneth Supreme McGriff.
Yes.
So it was the view of the federal government, the Department of Justice, that you had a relationship with him that was unholy,
yes.
that he was a drug dealer extraordinaire who was providing all the money to you to be able to operate, and that you were laundering his money.
When I hear that, okay, the lies that is inside of that is unreal. They know, the government knows all of these things. So to portray like he's fucking sitting on money, to portray he was a drug dealer when he comes home after 12 years and he's fucking on his ass and has nothing, and all the people he was in business with when he was a drug dealer, when I did not know him, I knew of him from Queens because we're all in Queens, but I did not know him. Is night and day. You can't compare when he was a fucking kingpin in the 80s, then does 12 years or whatever, and comes home, right? And then you meet him and he has no money. He's not the kingpin anymore. All his guys are gone. Has no operation anymore. He's trying to figure things out, and he asked my brother, can you make a movie? And their relationship grew. That was the first day he met Irv. The first question he asked was, can you make a movie? Irv was shooting a video for Cash Money Click, and it was on the South Side. We're from Hollis. Hollis and South Side do not mix. We're oil and fucking, right, water. We do not mix. And that's just what it is. I grew up my adolescent years fighting guys from South Side. Just because, not because I knew them, just because. So my friends from Hollis was like, how are you cool with this guy? Or once we became cool, I'm like, he's a nice dude. And that's all it was. He was cool. He wasn't no like on some crazy stuff, and he never asked for nothing crazy. He was always trying to build a business to get himself elevated. And we ended up helping him make a movie called Crime Partners. But the problem with that is, or the reality of that was, it wasn't like it was just us. Jay-Z helped him. Snoop Dogg helped him. Ice-T helped him. DMX helped him. It was not just us. Jay-Z Game Dash helped him. We all did, and we all had contracts for a movie that we invested in, like a legitimate business, like any legitimate business, that if you started a company, you say, Chris, can you invest? And we would have a contract for that. Exactly the same. But the government at the time had came to my house. They would come to my house to come see me pretty frequently, 2-3 times a week. My lawyer, Shargell, God bless, he would always tell me, don't talk to him. I said, Chagall, I'm not going to say nothing. I just want to hear what the fuck they're talking about. And one time they said, he's not going to get away. They said, he's a fish to water. He's going to go right back to what he was doing, and we're going to be there to get him. And if you don't cooperate, you'll be sitting right next to him. And to which I looked at him and I said, what is wrong with you guys? I said, you guys can leave. I told them to leave when they said that. Man, they get up in there mumbling all types of shit, but that's their mindset. They said all his friends are dead or in jail and he'll be next. And if you don't cooperate, you'll be written right next to him. And I was like, wow, these guys is really like, they're set on this is what they're going to do. But it's a crazy time, man. It was a crazy time.
And then the three of you are indicted.
Yes. We all end up getting indicted. I believe the reason we get indicted because it was already, like I said, 2.5 years going on to almost 3 years before they could put a case together to say, here, we're coming forward with something. And they tried to they tied us together with all these false accusations and charges that they put on Supreme Griff, and it made us all three like co-defendants. We're not in that world at all. I never sold drugs in my life. I never did that ever. Like, you couldn't prove that anywhere because there's no one to say, yeah, I sold Chris some drugs to sell, or I bought some drugs from Chris that he sold. So end of the day, it was so crazy. And then, we're sitting there with all these charges. It was a lot of charges. Do you know how many charges Supreme was charged with at the time originally?
No, I don't recall, but he had about 10 or 12 charges at least.
Yes, it was a lot of charges. And we was charged with the exact same charges as he was. And when we see that, we're like, how are we being charged with murders and drugs? And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And, we was fortunate enough to get our cases severed from him. So he stood on his own trial alone and versus us, because I feel as much as he's a friend, it's not fair. That's not a real thing. We're not co-defendants in the sense of we was partners in any shape, form, or way of any business. Only thing we was guilty of is we helped him.
How did you learn that you were indicted?
We learned because our lawyers was already on the case, and it was presented to them that they're coming to get us to arrest us. So they picked us up in our offices. There's a famous picture of Irv coming out with his coat, and they're all there. And you don't see me, but I was right behind him.
And so tell us what that experience was like, to be arrested when you thought you had done nothing wrong and it had only been someone helping others.
Man, so many things races through your mind. You're thinking your family. We have kids. You're thinking of your mom, your dad, and your brothers and sisters. That's really the first thing in mind for me personally. I literally, and I took the whole thing very lightheartedly in the sense once I get past that part, I never thought we was guilty. I never thought we was going to I never thought we was getting convicted. There's a moment when I was with Chagall and he said to me, Chris, as much as I know you're innocent, it's very challenging to get 12 people, your peers in the Eastern District, right, to say not guilty. That was after they gave us an offer of no jail time. That's when he said that, which was further on. But when we first got picked up, we was very frustrated. We're thinking of business. How's it going to affect the business? We're not realizing Universal is cooperating with the government. So we're thinking we got a partner that cares and is going to help, which was nothing further than the truth. The government moves very strategic. That's all I can tell anyone that is hearing this. And if you're dealing with any kind of a case, just understand every move that the government is making is very calculated. They want to stop your resources or relationships that could help you beat them, in my opinion. And I'm like, you have to understand that. And I didn't know that during the trial. This is all hindsight. After I look back and went over this shit over and over and over, it's like that's what I came from it, from all the conversations I had with these agents and, my friends that told me the agents visit them, trying to get them to say something negative about us. But thank God there's nothing there. And they didn't. Now, someone could easily lie, but they didn't. And the ones that did don't even know me. So it was easy to destroy their credibility on the stand because they don't have a knowledge. They don't know me. They never met me. How could they prove that they know me and say these things? And they couldn't.
I've been through the experience as well. So, but how do you react every day while you have a charges pending? You're having issues with the Universal. You're having issues with the credibility attached to Murder Inc. People automatically say, "Oh, they must have done something," and you've got to deal with your children. You have to deal with your mother, your sisters. What was that like?
It's really preparing for the worst, right? You hear that expression all the time, prepare for the worst. So we prepared for the worst. I literally, at the time, even my girlfriend at the time, I didn't want her to have to do 20 years if I get convicted. And I just start pushing her away. And it's something that the way I treated her, I was like, damn, man, I wish I didn't do it. And I spoke to her afterwards and, in hindsight, but she didn't understand it, like why. But I didn't want her to have to do a bid with me if that was the case. Your mom, I'm blessed with mom and dad. When they was hearing everything, they was just nothing but support. Whatever you need, whatever happens, we're gonna be here. They kind of gave you that comfort. And in me personally, Rob, I swear to you, there's only one time in the trial that I thought, damn, this might not go my way. Every other day, I was fucking great. My mind mentally focused, and with all the trials and tribulations, the stress, I was able to deal with it. I would be outside with all the newspaper articles and everything, with people looking at you like you're a monster and everything because you're in the cover of the page of the Post, the Times, the Daily News. And, you go out and everyone's looking at you. Literally, that meant nothing. I was fine. And I went out every night because I couldn't stay home. I told my driver, Demi, shout out Demi. He did an amazing job making sure I was there on time every day, making sure I'm up and ready every day. And you need the support when you're going through that. And I had that support with Demi, my family, especially. That's the core. And this priceless. All my friends, Todd, Nichols, all of them was right there from a supportive standpoint. People from all over the country that I have relationships checking in with me. And, I'm blessed with the amount of love and support I had. But I didn't think of the trial in a negative way, except for one day.
And what was that one day?
So when your deliberations, we got all of the charges down to just 2 charges: money laundering and conspiracy to money launder. And I understand that when they're deliberating, they have to go in order of the charge, right? So the first charge, second charge, in order. So they send a note out. And what is notes? They send notes out to explain the law if they have any issues. And when that note comes out, the prosecutors and the defense attorneys have to agree on the message that goes back into the
jury room.
All the jurors, yes. And the question that came out was the conspiracy. What is conspiracy to money launder? What would make that real? And I lose my mind because I'm pissed. And it took me about 40 minutes to get past. And I lose my mind because if they go in order, that means we are not guilty on the first charge. There's no way they're even thinking about the second charge if we're guilty on money laundering. We had to conspire to money laundering. So you should be guilty, guilty. So that means we're not guilty. And they're now deciding if we get this conspiracy charge, and conspiracy, that charge held the same amount of time. And I went crazy. My lawyer, Shagel, was like, calm down. And he's, let me get this note back to the thing. And they figure it out and they get the note back. And he said, you're right. We have to be not guilty, because I explained why I'm so mad. And I'm like, they're trying to hang us up on a fucking conspiracy charge. And there's nothing, like, we're conspiring now. This is bullshit. You know, like that's even a thought. And it's the other part is Friday. It's 4:50 and the court ends at 5:00, and we would have to wait through the weekend to come back on a Monday. And we didn't want the jurors to go out and have to deal with press, media over the weekend, and maybe they start thinking the wrong way. Like, we wanted it to be over. Man, Rob, that door knock, that was the door, and the clerk coming back at 4:59. 1 minute before 5:00. All rise, and we have a verdict. We were like, oh man! I mean, that courtroom was amazing. Like, I really want to do a movie about just the trial, or a documentary of the trial. It's an iconic trial. It's, for us to win in a system that no one wins technically, right? And the emotion of the trial, of the case, of the people in there. The jurors asked to speak to us afterwards. My lawyers was crying, and Shargel and Left Court was both crying, and they both said they never seen or experienced anything like this in their whole history, that jurors requested us to come back to talk to.
So this is a wonderful moment when you are both found not guilty.
Yes.
But what has happened to the business?
Well, again, hindsight is 2020. We're thinking the business is going to be fine. We had to sign contracts because they stopped paying us, and we couldn't. Universal. We didn't have enough money to keep paying liquid cash. I was broke. All my money was in my lawyers and everything. I was broke. Irv continued to pay, but he's running out of liquid cash, and he didn't want to start selling houses, or me. I didn't want to sell a house or a property to pay for the bill. And Universal owed us so much money. And illegally, they come in, they give us some of the money they owed us, a fraction of what they owed us, they paid us, but they made a contingent. If we went to jail, they would own everything 100%. If we want this money, and that's what they did. So they was probably betting that we're going to jail, and then they could take Murder Inc. or try to, whatever. Thank God we won, and that was not the case. But now we don't have a deal with Universal after we win. We get acquitted in 2005. We don't get our next deal for a year and a half. So that lets you know how much they didn't want to deal with us. We're failing. We're coming right back. We're going to be great. We had all these things lined up. We put out a record with Lloyd. It's the number one record in the country. And hundreds of millions in audience. And we don't get the number one record because they're not letting us be on top of the game anymore. These things are very controlled. These numbers, they know what they're doing. Leo's on the other side of the fence now. He's not on our side, and he's calling Irv, telling him, you're not going to get the number one. And he has an artist called Music Soul Child that has 1/10 of what audience we have, but he outsold us by 3,000 records at the end of the day for the number one spot. Again, the number game in this business, you could buy records. They know that. They know how to manipulate that. And they manipulated because if we was to be number one, they knew we was going to get all these different perks from all these different companies for coming back after going through a trial, winning the trial, and then coming right back with a number one album in the country. The story is huge. They didn't allow the story. They blocked.
So what happens to Murder Inc.?
Irv realizes that he can't win in that system. They're not here to support us. And he basically says he's done. And he had a meeting with everyone. And when he says he's done, he tells them all, I'm going to keep paying you till my contract's out. Go find another job. And Irv likes to call it his sabbatical. That's when he took his sabbatical. But they didn't know it. And we lived out our contract for another year and a half, and everyone got paid. But that was the end of Murder Inc.
And so how did you and Irv...
That was the end of Murder Inc. as we knew it, because Irv was not now producing music anymore, and everything stemmed on Irv. You know, in a company, that's not the best way to do a company, you know, where one man is the end all be all.
So what do you two do after the sabbatical?
I had started sports management. I was dealing with a lot of NBA players, managing or co-agenting at the time. And I went into insurance business. I went into hedge fund business. I diversified because I didn't want to worry about the music industry anymore. If Irv is out, I didn't care. I'll go make money other ways, and I did. And I did different business. I turned into a real entrepreneur, starting businesses, partnering with people for businesses. That's what I did. That's me. Irv didn't do anything. But Irv generated a different set of money than I did as a producer. So I needed to get business or I would be in trouble. And then at the end of the day, that's what I had to do.
And so you have a number of enterprises going on right now. Can you tell us what you're doing now?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I have some great enterprises. The first one is right here, Adventure Music. It's a digital platform that I actually promote independent artists and teach them how to own, operate, and monetize their business. So they get a platform, they could distribute their music throughout the country, all the places that, let's say, Warner, Unit Brothers, we do it. We have the same plus more. Like, you know, I have the jail systems, which is huge. JPEG. It just has to be clean. The music has to be clean. It can't be dirty. They don't want that in the jail system, right? All the cursing, and it might make the inmates a little riled up, and they don't want to deal with that. But, you know, and I'm just doing that to empower artists, to teach them the game, the trials and tribulations of, let's say, the music business, how to navigate around things. You know, the hardest part is the fund. You know, record labels funded the movement of all these artists. So now if you're independent, you have to figure out how to get the funds to do that for yourself in a massive way, you know, if you really want to step it up. And that's the challenge. That's like the biggest challenge for them and myself, because I want to find avenues to do that for them, to help them. Nothing for free. When you're independent, you eat what you kill. So you got to get ready to get out there. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to get the help you need. And I try to explain them that part. Then I have a basketball league I started, which is amazing. It's called Clash Pro Basketball League. First year was last year. We had an incredible season to start it. And this year I'm doing season 2, and I'm raising like $3 million for that to get that next season to go. And then after that, and it's all NBA type players. These are guys that went and played college basketball D1, but may not had the opportunity to get to the NBA or even overseas. And it's the first time in this country that there's a professional league, and we're doing it right here in New York, in Harlem, to start. And the real growth is I'll do it in Baltimore, Chicago, DC, not a team, the league. So we'll have multiple leagues all over the country. And we use, excuse me, and we use influencers, okay, which is the spin, as owners, because they'll promote the league and they'll promote their team, and then they get a piece and a share of all the revenue from both sides.
So this is a 5-on-5?
Yes, it's a regular game. I just shortened the game, and I created different rules than the NBA in the sense of it's 5-on-5. I do a running clock, so the game is shorter. The clock doesn't stop except on timeouts or when it gets down to 1 minute or 2 minutes respectively in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, right? But really that running clock is so important because that's, today these attention span of these guys, no one really wants to sit 2.5, 3 hours for a game. Even at the NBA level, those games have to be extremely high level. You watch most of these NBA games, if the team is no good, half the arena is empty. And that's because no one wants to sit through those games like that. And that is a problem that they're having in the NBA, and I don't want that problem. And then I did man on man, meaning...
How do I see the games?
Clash TV, you go right to our Clash basketball app in your website, and you could pick up all the games. You'll see them. And we do them live. This year we have the Zone Network, and we have MSG that wants to cover us. So we have both those networks that'll be showing the games as well for this season. We're looking to start in March, getting everything in order and set. And once that's done, that'll be second season, ready to go.
And the third enterprise?
Third enterprise, Art Films. I'm a filmmaker now, Rob. I make films. I'm shooting one right now called Raffle in Miami. I got to get out there next week, but we're shooting. It already started. I'll have we have Ballin' out right now. Go watch it. It'll be on so many different platforms, but Tubi, if you want to just go to Tubi, you can watch it on Tubi. But I mean, The Supreme Truth. We did a documentary. Go get it. I'm a producer on that as well. And that's out now. You can go to PrinceMillerNYC.com and go there, and you can watch The Supreme Truth. It's the documentary on Kenneth Supreme McGriff and his representation by the government of trying to charge with all these illegal charges or false accusations and false charges. And it's just he's proven why he shouldn't be incarcerated for what he's incarcerated right now.
Just by another postscript, Kenny serving McGriff.
Yes.
7 life sentences.
Yeah. Crazy.
And he should not have been convicted, one, but even if the fact remains he was convicted, 7 life sentences plus 40, I think.
Yeah.
If he should survive the 7 life sentences.
It's completely wrong, man.
But the documentary is in part to show why Kenny really was not guilty in the first place.
Right. But I'm going to tell you, when they came to my apartment, the feds, they're like, he's not getting away. The conviction they were saying that with is what I see now in hindsight. They didn't want it for whatever reason. They had it out for him. They had it out for him, and they was like, all his friends are either dead or in jail, and he'll be next. He's not getting away, and if you don't cooperate, you'll be sitting right next to him. That's the threats they was making.
And what happened with Kenny, in part, was that they had attempted to prosecute him back in 1985. The search that they did was not a good search. That case was suppressed. The federal government came in, prosecuted him. We flim-flammed the federal government. They were so scared of my beating them at trial and walking away completely that they gave him a plea offer. They thought he was getting 12 years. He wound up getting serving 3.5, 4 years. Right. They was so upset that he got out so early, shocked when they saw him on the street. This is the preface under which they then made statements like that to you. He's not getting away with it. They were so upset.
I know. But again, it's so... Here's how I look at Supreme's case as well. He has a history. And this is just for me what I went through, right? And I went through something, but I experienced it at every level because I wanted to make sure I was there. And I made sure Shargell let me I'm present at every meeting, everything, till I can hear and see everything going on. And when I look at what I was told again, and one of the biggest days for me was the first day in court. And it said, the United States of America versus Christopher Lorenzo. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? I didn't understand that I'm facing this case against the United States of America. They beat countries. What chances do I have? Is where my mind was going. They take down countries. How can I deal with this shit? It was very impactful for me to hear that. And then I'm getting told by my attorney, this is the fairest we're gonna get. And there was a moment in our trial or in the motion hearings. The first day, our judge says, "What are we all doing here? We know these guys are guilty." The judge on my case, to which I'm sitting there, but I'm suited, so he doesn't realize I'm the witness. Or I'm the defense. I'm the defense. He thinking I'm one of the attorneys because my lawyer said that most clients never come to their motion hearings. They just let them do it.
Right.
No, and I wanted to be part of everything. I'll give you the expression Shagel would always say. He said, "You make the snowballs, I throw them." I understood that later. I didn't understand it when he first said it, but I understand it now completely. And in the middle of the trial, I understood it. So I'm there. And when he said that, I just wouldn't stop staring at him. And then I grab the notepad and I write, "Is this grounds to get an appeal?" And I slide it back, and Shagel leans to me and said, "Let's talk afterwards." And Shagel said, "Chris," afterwards, he tells me, "This is the fairest judge we'll probably get in this Eastern District. I know him." I say, he said he couldn't believe he said that, but he's probably the fairest judge. I said, "How is this the fairest judge in this system? This doesn't make fucking sense. We're already guilty. He didn't even hear anything yet." And that's when I look at a guy like Supreme and the chances someone or anyone like a Supreme that has a history, right? That has a history to get put in front of 12 people who are not their peers, but 12 people to get them to say not guilty. It would take an act of God, in my opinion. And that's why that system is rigged for no matter what, because once you're guilty, you're always guilty in this system. Even though they say you're not guilty until proven innocent. No, you're guilty until you prove you're innocent. And that is the problem. And that is what Supreme ran into with this next one, because after he came home after those 12, his history, he's the kingpin and this and that. The likeliness of people not believing what the United States of America is accusing you of. That's coming from that level. Think of the average citizen that's supposed to be on this as a juror, and they hear that the United States of America is saying you did all these things. Oh man, it's like, how do they not believe it? How do they not believe it?
That's right.
That is the true fight for a defense attorney and his client in these systems, in my opinion.
And every time the judge turns to them and says, "What does the government have to say?"
Yes.
So you're fighting the government, the United States of America.
Yes. And if you're, again, in this country, you're thinking, the government wouldn't do that to just anybody for nothing. Why would they do that? That's logical, rational thinking from a juror. Why would the government say that Chris did these things if he didn't?
Exactly.
That's what you're facing. So, and then put someone with a history, because I had no history. They couldn't say, well, he had priors and this and that. No. But think of someone with a history like a Supreme Kenneth McGriff, and that's what he's facing more than anything else, is the perception of those jurors and what they're going to perceive the United States of America is saying about him and the likeliness of it being true. And, I wish him all the best. I'm here. I try to do whatever I can for him. But that is the uphill battle. I don't know a stronger mind than that man. Mentally, he's very strong mentally. And that's what it takes to get through this. And I'm sure something will happen in a positive way.
Well, I'm knock on wood, because I go back with Kenny now to 1987. So
you're before me.
We have a long relationship.
Yeah.
In any event, Chris, thank you so much for today. It's a wonderful opportunity to sort of explore, and there's so much more there.
Yes.
But today we'll have this session, and we'll do this again in the future.
George, no problem. You know I'm here for you whenever you call. I'm there.
All right, my friend.
All right, Rob. Thank
You be
you.
well. Say hello to your family for me.
I
please.
will.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Every day in this system is a new day with new developments, and we're going to explore all of those things that are going on in today's system, as well as give you more of an understanding of how it operates, well or not. And Chris is giving you a perfect example of how it did not operate to the benefit of our system. He and his brother were charged with no basis, and the jury made that clear when they came back with their verdict. So we will see you next week. For Robert Simels, this is Injustice for All.